So one of them was just simply a desire to leave ethics into other classes or other courses. So those educators just did not think, well, this didn't really belong within this particular content area. Maybe it was so niche down that they didn't think that it was applicable. Like the example of going to lessons for learning how to play marimba, and then instead of doing that, you're actually learning about the shortage of rosewood. The next barrier is that professors thought that some other topics had higher priority. Like there's so much technical stuff that we need to learn that we don't have time to really focus on the ethical. Now, I would argue, as somebody with a PhD in a subject area, that there is never enough time to learn everything that you need to know about a particular subject area, especially in a single course. As I mentioned in other curriculum episodes in particular, there is this concept known as the Null curricula. So the Null curricula are the things that are left out of a curriculum. So whether it's a course or a degree or whatever. Even though I have 3 degrees in music education, I still do not know everything about pedagogy and content knowledge related to music and music education. And I know that same thing applies for every single domain out there. So there are always other things that are going to be left out of a coursework. And what you need to figure out is, where is that balance between whether or not you should include something or not include something? But as we've talked about in other episodes, should your weight be focused more on the technical or more on the theoretical or the applied understanding of the technical? Can you apply the understanding if you haven't learned the technical? But at what point is it saturated enough that you've learned enough of the technical to learn how to apply it into the ethical? Again, no right or wrong way of doing it, just some more things that we have to think about as educators. The next barrier is kind of related to that, so it's just the general idea that, well, ethics doesn't really relate to this particular content. The barrier after that is that they felt like they could not control the curriculum. So having worked in higher education, I do know that sometimes the professors are kind of handed a textbook or handed a full curriculum that just basically says, here's what you're going to teach on what specific days, and here are the assignments, etc. So if you are like a faculty associate or something like that, you might not have control over what is actually taught within that class. You can still find ways to incorporate discussions on it, maybe not make a full assignment or change the assignment to focus on it, or maybe you can by just focusing around a particular theme. But after an assignment is completed, you could say, cool, we just learned this thing, we applied it. Now let's talk about the ethical implications of the concepts and practices that you just learned. How might what you just created impact the users or communities that are going to use or not use this particular app or product or whatever? And the next barrier is that participants mentioned not having enough time, incentives, or encouragement to actually integrate ethics into their classes. Again, with the time thing, there's always going to be no curricula. There's never enough time to learn everything. I still know just a fraction of what it means to be a music educator or to understand music education. And the same thing with computer science. Even though I've been in this field for about a decade, I still have so much to learn and understand. And then the last barrier that some of the professors mentioned is that ethics actually distracts from working on the core computing concepts. So here's an interesting quote that kind of summarizes this from page 370, and there are a bunch of other interesting quotes throughout each one of these sections. So if you want to see what professor said, I do highly recommend taking a look at this article. Quote, ethics instruction is unquestionably essential for computer science students. Ethical mistakes in computing can have disastrous consequences. However, adding ethics to courses on algorithms or discrete mathematics is distracting and ineffective, end quote. So the author of this particular question really understands the importance of this thing, but then says, yeah, but it takes away from this other thing that they view as more important. And what I wonder is, are we focusing too much on the love that we have for a particular content area without actually thinking about the application of it? If you want to listen to the full episode of this podcast, check out episode 182 of the CSK8 podcast on any podcast platform you listen to.